Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's event. We have a very cool Ask Me Anything session with Aditya. A brief introduction before we get started with a very controversial topic regarding career opportunities other than SDE. I would be introducing Aditya to you all. A DevRel engineer working at Appwrite, an MLH coach. If you guys are attending the MLH build, you might have seen him on Twitch. I know I did. A Twilio Champion, a Gold Microsoft Student Ambassador, as well as a Google DSC Lead 2021. We have with us Aditya, so over to you.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone. Hope you're all doing well. It's absolutely great to have you with us for this little session. I am Aditya. I'm currently a DevRel engineer here at Appwrite. As Abhishi mentioned, Appwrite is an open source backend as a service platform, so you can think of it as a Firebase alternative. It's actually pretty cool, so you should check it out definitely sometime. Um, Aside from that, yeah, I've been active in communities for I guess over 2 years now. I've spent a while as a Major League Hacking coach, as a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, a Twilio Champion, which is Twilio's MVP program, and a Google Developer Student Club lead. So communities have just been my space. It's one that I enjoy working in, and I'm happy to be building a career in that direction as well. And yeah, I hope this session will give you a chance to kind of discuss some of your doubts, some of your queries around careers in spaces, of course, within SDE, but beyond as well.
Right. So we have a lot of pre-prepared questions for the AMA session. The very first question is that whenever someone enters college, especially in BTech and everything, the first thing you hear is okay, there are tech roles and there are non-tech roles. Like that's the first division that comes, and then there are subdivisions. So how would you explain, like how would you like bifurcating all the job roles that are there and calling them that tech? Like how does it all work out?
Okay, so I think on that note, the first thing we have to think about is how exactly do we define tech and non-tech roles? Because for a lot of people, anything beyond SDE is a non-tech role. So it kind of comes down to what you're looking for. Because frankly speaking, in my opinion, I don't think this sort of differentiation really matters anymore in today's date. I think there are roles and opportunities which kind of bring both together. So there is no single distinction anymore. So the first thing is kind of just to drop this entire notion that you can either do tech or non-tech or something like that. Because the fact is that you're effectively pushing some sort of sigma on yourself, which is really not worth the headache, right? You're gonna see people be like, this isn't worth it and all and whatever, because like SD is SD, and it means that you can build and you can do a lot of DSA and stuff. And honestly, those notions, if that's not for you, it doesn't really matter. So kind of just let this be for a while. You don't need to put so much pressure and choose just instantly.
That's actually something I'll definitely keep with me. It's really that we need to remove that parallel. But
Yeah.
so everyone who enters, especially the the freshers and the sophomores, they're like, be engineering is SDE. um and a lot of times it happens is that if you don't get into an SD role, you don't really know how you can contribute to tech apart from it. So would you like talk about some more like job profiles apart from SDE, wherein you still be coding and like using technology and everything?
Sure. So okay, now the first thing there is to kind of start understanding how we perceive roles as well, right? um, an SD, a software development engineer, could be a general thing, right? You might have something a little more focused. uh, so it's not that someone who is a front end engineer will have to code less. It's just an SD is a more general specific term that could include all of these different spaces, whether it's a front end engineer, a back end engineer, someone who might be doing ML work, someone who might be doing um, RPA or cloud engineering. There's just SD is a very diverse term, right? That being said, there are other spaces which will still allow you to code, whether not. whether it might not be just as active or as regular, but you're still going to get exposed to it. Like for example, DevOps is going to have some sense of coding and scripting. More than that, more than general development, it'll have a lot of scripting work as compared. It could have more code as well. That's totally a thing that's very much possible. DevRel is another space which will have partial coding work. Then there will be components of community and content and potentially marketing as well. So you have a lot of other spaces. Product might uh, allow you to get more exposed to some technical aspects, even if not in similar capacities. UI UX work might allow you to get exposed to code in some aspects, even if not as much. Um, and that again varies from organization to organization as well, right? So
Exactly.
there's a lot of different spaces beyond SDE that will allow you to get close to technical aspects. It to an extent will also depend on the organization that you join, but in general, yes, you can get that exposure in a lot of other places.
That's a very that's a very great answer. In accordance to the previous question, we have a very cool question again coming for you. So
Okay.
talking about the craze of SDE. So the question is, how can the gap between the craze of SDE and other profiles be reduced? Because there are many alumni and resources when it comes to preparing for an SDE role. But if you talk about other roles apart from it, there's also less information and resources. But when you're also applying for those roles, the people, the HR and the recruiters would be looking for skills and experience. So how can someone gain experience during college, whether it's doing internships or any other program, like if they want to apply for roles apart from SDE, let's say?
Okay. So when we talk about the difference in amount of people focused on a specific space versus another, it's important to understand why these differences and gaps get built in the first place. Now, when you enter university, I'm going to take the context of computer science engineering here because that's what I'm doing. When I enter as a CS student, my curriculum is designed to support me in my journey to either become a researcher in computer science or become a practitioner of computer science, right? um, when we talk about being a practitioner, what is the one primary space where you see practitioners of computer science? That is within the software engineering space.
Exactly.
That is a reason why someone who might be in my space might kind of want to become a software engineer because that's what they're studying for, right? Second, if we talk about software engineers in general, people are actively building as skilled people of a certain trade. uh, you tend to have opportunities available for them, right? Some lucrative, some not, but there tend to be opportunities. That
Exactly.
becomes a second reason why people would see a larger amount of interest. Now, let me compare this with DevRel, for example. DevRel is a newer space. The requirement for this is only started growing at a faster pace today because we now have organizations that are catering to developers or have solutions that can be leveraged by developers, right? Developer first or plus organizations. Until these grew, this domain would not have grown because there just wasn't enough demand for this, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Only when we start seeing demand for a specific role will we start seeing more interest towards it, because till there is demand, why will someone kind of want to jump for this, right? That's one
True.
side of it. As demand grows, of course, we will see more interest. Like, for example, what's happening with uh, roles around community management or developer relations. We're seeing more and more people experiment, whether it's voluntarily with programs, whether it's through internships. But there are more people who are trying this out in today's world, and that's going to increase as these roles, as these opportunities keep increasing. Um, so that's one side of it. And third, of course, is that software engineering as a space will allow you to touch on a lot of components as well, whether it's around design aspects, whether it's around um, product management, lot of these spaces, right? Whether it's system design.
True,
So
true.
not every single organization or every single role might allow you to touch all of them, but they will, in general, allow you to touch various different spaces. So it's the same as you're doing engineering to maybe go out towards something else.
Yeah.
It's going to give you a certain initial base that you can build on top of, right? A rather safe base, at least in today's world. Um, so that is the other side of why software engineering sees a go to. Like, for example, in the past, when I talk about DevRel, one condition of DevRel is that you need to be just as good as people and with content as you can with code. So you need a balance in between in both. For a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people, the only way to get experience with code building was through a software engineering job.
True,
In the
true
past, that was
enough.
the case. Maybe today, yes, we've got enough hackathons, we've got a lot of open source that students are exposed to, so those become alternate routes for people to experiment. But in the past, that was the only way, right?
Yeah,
Similarly, when we talk about product management, you had people only get exposed to the process of developing a product as someone who would enter the space professionally, which is why product was, and for the most part, is still not yet something that every single person can access. Yes, there are people who get good enough at it today who are able to access these opportunities without getting some sort of experience, but in general, there are spaces. And it's not just that you might not have relevant experience, it's also a certain amount of education that is needed, right? When we talk about a space like product management, for example, you need to have some amount of design sense. If you're a technical PM, you need some design sense, you need some exposure to how systems are built, to be able to plan those. You need some sense of finance to be able to work with stakeholders. You need some sense of project management, which you might not be exposed to until you're actually working professionally.
true.
But that being said, today we're seeing more and more alternate routes come up, which allow you to actually touch these different spaces, right? Now, if I take the example of what I'm doing, that is developer relations,
Mm-hmm.
to learn about content creation, I can manage my own technical blog. To learn about public speaking, there are enough communities, there are enough conferences. My own platforms are something I can use. I can use my own YouTube if I want, right? Or my own Twitch. If I want to build projects, I can go and work with code. I could go to hackathons, I could contribute to open source. The way open source has grown and the way it's impacting people is freaking
Exactly.
amazing because it's open to all. So I now have this entire space that I can work with, right? But in the past, maybe these opportunities were not as easily accessible because resources like these weren't easily accessible. Like you couldn't live stream enough, right? If you didn't have good enough internet access. But that's becoming less of a problem today. Maybe 5 years, 7 years, 10 years back, that was not the case. So scenarios and times to bring some changes in circumstances which enable more opportunities in alternate spaces. We're seeing those open now. Chances are some of these spaces will grow a lot more in the times to come. So it's always a good idea to keep an eye out.
Definitely. Um, now that's a very good answer, and I have very more questions coming up. So
Sure,
before
sure,
I
sure.
jump into them, the first question that again we have in aspect to the answer that you
Mhm.
told. Um, okay, the majority of the people who are doing BTech do not enjoy coding, or at least there is a fair amount of people who realize that I can't code or I'm not enjoying it. I'll do something non-tech or I'll shift and all of that stuff. So, and like,
I'm very
there's a
happy this has come up.
yeah, this is also something I am also experiencing on a personal level,
I have
but
been
a
through
lot
this
of people are,
myself.
yeah,
I've
exactly.
been through this myself. And I have some comments on that. So I think on that, the first question you have to ask yourself is, do you not enjoy coding or do you not enjoy data structures and algo
Yeah,
practice? Because
it's like
those two are made to look similar, but they're not the same.
so true. We have,
Okay.
I mean, that's there. So, back to my question. Like, people will be like, I don't enjoy coding. I'm not able to do it, or they're not able to get that kickstart, or they're not able to start regularly. A lot of things, but then the conclusion is that I'm not able to code. I will do something non-tech. And because when you are, and how everything is working is, okay, you need to sit for placements, you need a basic knowledge of data structures, you may not enjoy, but you have to security and a lot of things come in. So when Now in all of that, there are people who are also, a lot of, if you're not good with data structures or anything, you need some tech internships to, build up your
Mhm.
resume. But you also want to try out new things non-tech to just figure out where you land in. So there's a lot going on. There's also this fear of, like switching from tech to something non-tech, whether it's through internships and stuff. So especially for a fresher, if you're spending 4 years doing a technology, like a degree, how can, number a, a fresher jump from without getting into tech to something non-tech or something other from SDE? Like there's a lot that's going on, whether it's, making that jump as a fresher, or whether it's, you want to try out something different from SDE, but you are supposed to also try out for SDE because, you'll be sitting for placement. So how would you address such a big fiasco?
Okay, so my first point on that is, if your only reason for switching is you think you can't code, then please sit, wait, and actually spend some time building something. Um, the reason why I say this is, I fell in the same imposter syndrome with DSA stuff at one point. If you ask me today, I'm still not great when it comes to. I can't code about graphs to save my life either, and I still just understand trees theoretically. I haven't practically built stuff there. The reason why a lot of us kind of feel scared to code is because we feel afraid that just because we might not have a certain amount of DSA knowledge at one point, whereas someone sitting next to us might, then we are lesser. I promise you that is not the case. Okay. I started coding back in school. I joined college. Because of imposter syndrome, I almost left coding. The only reason I kind of did not fully leave it and I was able to get back to it is because I started participating in hackathons and I started building for myself, which is when I realized that I don't hate coding. I just don't like the pressure of a DSA interview or a
Mhm.
DSA test. And that's something that you have to figure out. That being said, the other side of DSA is that data structures and algos are actually not bad. They only seem bad because they become a criteria to be tested on.
Exactly.
When we talk about some concepts in these spaces, you're going to see practical use cases of them in your daily drivers, whether it's your systems. Like if you're on Windows, your file explorer, if you're using your directory structure, uses trees there, for example. You're talking Google Maps, you're going to find uses of graphs. um, you know there's stuff that you can see in your daily lives, and that's what you have to figure out. You're not just gonna, your data structures and algos are not just limited to lead code or code chef. These have practical real world use cases, and you have to start exploring tech in a way to explore rather than to complete a test. So that's my first point on that, because had I not enjoyed coding, I would not have been able to enter DevRel either, because you need to be able to build. You need to be able to actually develop to be able to do DevRel. So that's just an example there. Secondly, if you're just in engineering, because let's be honest, sometimes there are external pressures and factors that you can't deal with. That being said, college and extracurricular still give you a chance to explore a lot of other spaces. You can, through college clubs or external communities, get a taste of marketing, content creation. Sponsorship work is going to teach you how sales works. You can you can get some experience there. um, Accordingly, try to find other internships, work with brands. It's very much possible in today's date. The best factor about the remote scenario is that opportunities that weren't earlier available to you because of location are no more closed off.
True.
It is the
Work from
reason why I have been able to get in 3 internships as a student before joining Appwrite, on 3 different domains, by the way. Because these opportunities I could do along with college. I did not have that pressure. They were like, the companies were willing to let that happen, and because we were all remote, I could just do it from wherever I wanted instead of being in the same city as where they might be based. So there are benefits of this scenario as well that you can leverage, and you can get a taste of a lot of things in a lot of spaces, right? If you want to
true.
talk about writing, just Work on your own blog, write articles with about whatever you want, whether it's tech, whether it's something else. You've got an entire world of people available to you through social media. Start using that the right way. Start following the right people. Start asking the right questions. And I promise you, there are people who want to help and who will help. But you've got to start asking the questions and putting in that effort. You can't expect that it's going to be handed to you in a silver platter, because the fact is, nothing will ever be handed to you like that. Everything is going to require effort. Everything is going to require your time.
Mm.
Okay? And also, I'm seeing the comments there. Uh, yeah, the
Comparison.
important thing is, yeah, you're gonna have to stop comparing yourself with every second person. Like, just for example, um, I was in the middle of third year when I decided I did not want another community management internship and wanted to get a dev internship, because I felt that if I don't take up that an opportunity now, I might lose the opportunity to actually be able to build in the future. And I took that call midway through third year. So we had already reached January of third year, and that's when I decided, no, I'm gonna start looking for a dev internship now. And I still got something. It may not have been a big brand, but it was one of the best experiences I ever had, because I knew where I was joining. I knew the mentors I was going to be working with. That is what I based my call on. Right now, we look at scenarios as, this is going to be our do or die. We need to get the biggest brand or the biggest endorsement now.
Mhm.
But the fact is that, sure, that can help you just as much. Um, Beneficial will be the right mentorship for you, and you can get that. Like, I literally, that's how I reached out to one of my mentors, someone who I wanted to work with, and I told them the entire scenario where I stood when it came to tech, and I still got an opportunity to work with them. And I worked on my favorite tech stack as well. That's .NET. I mean, anyone who's worked with me is probably going to be aware that I enjoy .NET. Uh, and I got to do that. I did 2 months of heavy backend work. And after that is only when I took a call that I wanted to do DevRel and not just pure software dev. So you're gonna get chances to make those decisions. You're gonna get those chances, but you're gonna have to build opportunities for yourself by your work. They're available out there, but you need to put in the effort to actually, build yourself enough to avail those, or make yourself accessible to those. And just saying, they
Definitely.
might not actually require as much as you might think. Just because a director requires a heavy CP experience, or an Amazon or a Microsoft requires some amount of interview coding or DSC experience, does not mean there aren't other good opportunities out there. These aren't the end of the world. They're fantastic opportunities, but they're not the end of the world. There are amazing organizations and roles that are available, and that compensate well as well, by the way, if that is a factor. And that's something I can personally endorse at this point.
That is quite that's like, bursting that bubble that you can't do code. Like, you can do
Sure.
it. It's just that you have to actually start doing it instead of just
You have to
imagining
start
it being
doing it and
true.
go beyond your DSA. Try to actually explore the development world just because you want to enjoy, and try to build something that you actually like rather than just following a curriculum. If you're expecting that college is going to teach you coding, or that you're going to become a coding expert sitting in class, that's not how it happens. It comes down to how you practice on your own time, how you explore these spaces. And for that matter, you have to be open to enjoying these as well, rather than just looking at coding as a race to win. That's not the right way to go about it. And the more you treat it as a race, the more you're going to put yourself in a position where you're comparing and just competing rather than actually exploring and enjoying.
Definitely. I mean, it's not exactly a rat race, but because how everyone's perceiving it and how it's being portrayed, it's kind of become one that, you
It's
have to do
become a rat
better.
race, but you don't have to get into that.
That's also there. Perspective. It's chaotic at times, but
It
um
is.
it is. So, we talked a bit about how, from SD to non-tech roles. We also have a question that talks about, how, like, what are the key skills required for successfully transitioning from a non-tech role to, let's say, developer advocate? Any tips for picking those skills really well?
Okay, that's a very broad question because I have no idea what non-tech role we're talking about. I'm gonna say that specificity in such cases helps. This is more on the person who sent in the question,
Yeah.
because here's the thing: a space like developer relations has a little of a lot. If your non-tech role is marketing, that's gonna be a component you need to learn how to build. If your non-tech role is technical writing, or you're not technical, just generally writing, then yes, you'll need some sort of tech exposure and you'll need a touch of growth and communities. You're going to have a lot of that based, it really comes down to what experiences you already have. And also, just saying, a space like developer relations is a very diverse umbrella. You can't even equate requirements of organizations there. Maybe some basic skills, but that's about it. So it comes down to what skills you have and what you want to grow towards and what you're targeting. Because I am at Appwrite because I like working with backend tech, I like working with web, I'm learning about it. Had I been at an organization which has an AI/ML product, I would have probably just, you know, blown my head off on the first day. Like, honestly. So it comes down to what you want. And that has nothing to do with those products, by the way. You have some amazing products there. It's just I don't want to do that. So it comes down to what you want to do and what you're targeting. And for that matter, like, honestly, okay, if you're transitioning into developer relations, get some dev experience, you're gonna need that. You can't possibly advocate for a product without actually building with it. As in, you can say, but where does the substance come from? That's the question, right?
Exactly.
Where does the experience come from? How do you validate that this is a problem and that isn't, without actually ever going through those or trying those out? um, you might be able to use documentation for a while, but after that it's just you're gonna start burning out and feeling the pressure. And how do you validate that experience, right? So start building. That's the thing you need.
It's more like what, you have to see what you're missing and, just compensating for it by
Yeah,
learning and
exactly.
exploring, definitely.
Exactly. And
I
please
think
don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid. We're a lot more of we're very afraid of that, especially in today's world with races on CGPAs and
it's so
and test
true.
scores and this and that. Please just start learning a little for the sake of learning and enjoying that. That's the important step.
I mean, it's like you start, okay, learn, like the beginning is always difficult, and especially when you're like learning new tech, even if it's web
It's
development or
supposed to be
anything.
difficult, right?
Yeah. And again, that imposter syndrome kicks in. You see your peers doing something XYZ, you start comparing, and then you actually don't start learning, but you then start finding faults and things like that. So I think, learning, nothing can beat learning. You have to learn.
The first step is to actually open yourself up, right? Like, if I don't know a certain concept and I start deciding that someone else does, so I'm just bad and I can't do this, that's just not right, because I haven't given myself the chance to actually go through that. And
Right.
the fact is that at the start you're not gonna know stuff. You are gonna lack. That's the whole reason why you learn, to grow that way, right? It takes time, it takes effort, and it is a process of its own that you have to go through. It doesn't mean you can't learn. It's just you haven't yet done it. And if someone else has, good for them. Doesn't matter. You take your own time. You start when you need to, when you think you want to. They like,
Right.
seriously, I'm telling you, at this point, chances are every single person in the audience knows is better at DS algo stuff than me. But I'm not worried about that because I have my focus areas and I have areas that I like to work at and I'm good at. And I'm okay with that. And that's what you have to be. You have to be okay with someone else being good at something. Them being great doesn't mean you can't be great.
I mean, this exact line, we kind of forget that,
Yeah,
like him being able to do it doesn't mean you can't do it. You can also do it. You just
everyone
have to
can
get
win.
started. True.
Honestly, you all can win. You don't need someone else to lose to get a win.
True. I would actually quickly just mention that we will have a question answer session at the end. So you guys can also drop in your questions. We'll definitely answer them. We are just answering the questions we already have, but that doesn't mean you guys can't ask questions. It's an AMA after all. So moving on, a very quick question. We also talked about like product management, like you also mentioned initially.
That's about it,
So
yeah.
so how does someone grab a product management internship, especially, when they're in college, and how, like, maybe developing skills, or even if you can talk about resumes, like how to approach it.
I think I can first talk more about
Hmm.
skills because opportunities for products specifically haven't generally been as easily accessible because of experience curves, right? Um, Now, when it comes to product management, there are different fronts to it. You might be someone who's focused on growth activities, you might be someone who's focused on technical activities. For that matter, I will put a disclaimer. There are better guides on this than me, and I haven't had as much direct experience. So take my words with a pinch of salt here, and just don't take them blindly. There are definitely going to be better guides for you out there. When we talk about product, let's talk about the different spaces you end up covering. You're talking about understanding how these systems work, right? If you're a technical PM, for example, you need to have some sense of understanding of how your systems are going to be built and work. So system design becomes a component there, at least from what I've heard with some of my friends who've gone through through product management internships. That's something you need exposure to, which means you actually have to get experience building something. Okay,
True.
that's for a technical PM. I'm not yet talking about a growth PM because I've been through a growth PM interview, so I can talk about my experience there after this. um, there are aspects of design that you need to be aware of. Okay, UI UX as well as system design. By the way, it's both of those, because as a technical PM, you're responsible for the overall management of a product, right? From as in the sense that you're responsible for how that development process takes place. Now, maybe the exact internal nitty gritties are not something that you're worried about, but the overall aspects, how these projects move forward, are something you need exposure to, which means you need to understand how project timelines work and how projects, yeah,
True.
okay.
Software engineering subject is
There
coming
are
right in.
concepts of software engineering that do come into play here, which is why some software engineering experience is often required for a technical product manager role. It's because you need to understand how you would build the product, right? To understand these aspects of it. Um, that's why this becomes a requirement. Third, of course, stakeholder management is a different side of it. Working with people, collaborating with people, ensuring teams function together. Now, that's something you might or might not learn in a software engineering team. You can learn that outside as well, right? Whether it's
True.
volunteering or working with people together, working on initiatives. Another side of it is to understand how metrics work, how you can quantify success. That's something that you can understand, whether it's through your own initiatives, whether it's by actually building a little product and launching it out there. There are different ways of understanding that. Understanding user flows and user journeys. What sort of problem a user would want to solve and why this is a problem and how this can be solved. Understanding those flows,
True.
it that there are overlaps there with, of course, design, because some of this I got exposed to in a user research internship, which has a lot to do with UX. So there are different aspects of these that you need to touch upon. Now, I will again repeat, a better guide than me would be someone who's dedicatedly doing product work. For that matter, content by folks like Diego Granados, who is a product manager at Microsoft. There's really good YouTube content there around product. So you can check that out. That's going to help a lot. For a growth PM, there are going to be aspects of understanding how marketing funnels, how sales funnels potentially work. User journeys again comes into play, trying to understand problems in user journeys. Those are fronts that you need to work at as well. Because I know this is something I had to interview upon back last year when I interviewed for a a product growth internship at Front Row. I went through that interview, didn't get through, but that's another matter altogether. um, but yeah, these are things that were discussed, things that I was exposed to. So I bring these up. Again, there are going to be better people to discuss this than me. There are going to be better guides. So again, putting that out there, please don't take my words as as testament. Just go out, explore on your own. I might be entirely wrong, and if you think that is the case, you can unlearn what I'm saying. That's totally all right. My word should not be the testament ever. I try to help, but make your own decisions on that. Okay, because one of the biggest problems is that people blindly follow information and
And
learn to question information. And it's okay to question information no matter who you might be getting that information from. It is all right to want to go through your own process to understand. Okay,
I think definitely like having your own judgment and like
it's
self-analysis is
very
very
important.
important. This
Like
this
I
is
can be
kind of
wrong, and I'm saying that up here right now. I can be wrong. You
and
don't have to,
definitely
but you have to be okay with that as well. And you have to keep in mind that whether it's me or someone else, someone on stage might have incomplete information or
Mhm.
might not have perfect experience, and it is okay for them to be wrong. And you don't have to blindly follow every single word. Just do your own research as well and trust your own judgment.
That's the most like trusting your own judgment, self-analysis, not following blindly, just seeing what works for you and what doesn't. That's super super important.
Yeah,
Uh,
take your own decisions there. That's you are the best person to take your decision because it's about you. So you're gonna be thinking of your own benefit there, and it is scary to do that because your belief systems might be affected by what someone else in front of you says, and
True.
just because they might have more experience doesn't mean you're wrong.
Again, it's all about learning and exploring and just
Yeah,
understanding.
and the fact that you're a different person, you're your own individual, you will have your own journey,
True.
and it is okay for that to be different from whoever is in front of you or whoever you're listening to.
Yeah, definitely. It's a learning. It's a weird world. You're just learning and exploring. So a
Honestly, I
lot of
say that
yeah.
because there were so many things I had to question and just not listen to, and I know that had I not done that, I would
Yeah,
not be where I am today. So
true.
I say that you should question things. It's a good thing to do that. It's a healthy thing to do that. You're actually thinking for yourself if you're questioning.
Yeah, that's a lot of people just try to copy someone's path. Like if he's doing this thing, I should also do the same things. And then they don't. That doesn't work out for them. And then it's like either the imposter syndrome kicking in, or they're like, I can't do it. It gets
Exactly, right?
messy.
Because it's someone else's path.
True. Yeah, exactly. That's the root, like the bottom solution. So moving on, a majority of the people who are watching and even the people who are questioning are either from tier 3 colleges, or there are a lot of people who are also from non CSIT background.
I'm also from
So
a tier 3 college, by the way, for everyone out there.
that shows tier is just just like don't label yourself that just because you're
There
from
are
tier 3 can't do this.
like so here's the thing when when tier 1 to 3 come into discussion, as much as we say they might not exist, there are differences that come into play at times. Okay, whether it's how opportunities are treated. Like I know there are some companies which will pay more for a student from a certain tier college versus another, but here's the thing: for every company that does treat this, there is one that might not. In fact, there are a lot that don't. Okay, and just because those folks have certain opportunities doesn't mean you can't build enough for yourselves. Like what honestly what the tier does is it increases the platform and the safety net for you. So if you start from here, you get here and you fall, your safety net for here is here, right? Now for someone who's not from a tier 1 college, it might be a little lower. The safety net might be lower, but it doesn't mean you can't reach there. Okay, that's the thing you have to understand, that you can still build opportunities for yourself as long as you work on your own terms. Okay, like I know people in DevRel who did. Okay, forget DevRel. I'll talk about a dev from my team. There is a dev from my team from Canada. And I say so because, okay, my team is a remote first team. We have 20 people from 10, 11, 12 different countries. So we're not even looking at that at this point. We have a person in my team who was formally trained as an applied chemist and mathematician, worked in pharma for a bit, left pharma because he felt that was a little soul sucking, did some music production work, traveled with a jazz band, then got into tech as s- someone in support, transitioned into databases and sysadmin work, got active in open source, and got into Appwrite's community and tried helping there, and that's how he got the job at Appwrite. And is one of the and this person is one of the founding engineers of Appwrite, by the way, one of the first 5 6 people who ever joined the team. Yeah, Unnati knows the story. I've mentioned this in the past. So here's the thing.
It's my first time listening. I'm already awestruck by it.
Exactly. Right? So I'm telling you, I'm awestruck about it as well. Just
I
saying, I'm
know.
always awestruck about this. But here's the thing, there are examples in front of you who can achieve this. This person did not start building because college or initial jobs gave that
True.
support. The person just kind of got there on his own. Appride then supported him is a different matter. And yeah, for that matter, I'm very happy about my company. Never stop endorsing that. But there are a lot of companies that support like that. Just saying, it's not the only company in the world. It's a great company though. I love working with Appride.
That this example in itself teaches so many things. Like you shouldn't be afraid to try something new, even if it's remotely not related to technology. I mean,
Yeah,
tech is not your your karta dharta. You can also step
don't make it
outside
a
and see new
barrier.
things. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like be involved in the ecosystem if you want to, but don't let it be your limit. There is far more you can do beyond that. And if you're outside of it, there are a lot of ways in as well.
Mm-hmm. True. True.
Yeah.
That's how. I mean, I remember in one of the like some conference or something, this lady talked about how she got into tech from a fashion degree and working at Microsoft. I mean, that's
Yeah. Like,
incredible.
are you talking about Donna Sarkar by any chance? Because she has her own fashion studio and she's like, I think, director of accessibility in one of the teams. And
I
she
might
led the
I
Power Platform team before this and the Windows Insiders team before that. Another example that I'll bring up is Chloe Condon, who is someone I definitely look up a lot to. I'll give you one more example after this. So Chloe was in
mm-hmm.
theater. She was an actor. She participated in, you know, plays and musicals and that sort of stuff. She got into a boot camp, did dev. That's where, after which she realized she can build and she likes working with people, and that's why she moved towards DevRel. I think she worked for a while at Sentry. I'm not 100% sure, but she definitely worked for a while at Microsoft, which is where I interacted with her. She was a senior cloud advocate there, and she
Mm-hmm.
has more recently joined Cloudbase. Not Cloudbase, like Coinbase. Coinbase. That's where she's joined now. She started in theater. She's doing DevRel today. Another example in DevRel, because again, I'm giving examples from DevRel because I am in DevRel, so I know people in DevRel. Another example I love to talk about, and a person I absolutely love interacting with is PJ Metz.
Mm-hmm.
PJ Metz was a teacher for 10 years or so, I think. In the pandemic, started coding with a few of these folks, and is today an education evangelist at GitLab. A third example who I might not have to talk enough about the journey of is Danny Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Danny Thompson, I think, he's done a lot of other stuff. I think he's worked as a cook and a few different things. Crazy. Got into tech, self learned. Was at Google earlier, by the way. Just left Google. He was at Google. So, do you honestly think your degrees can limit you from doing this stuff?
Definitely not. Definitely not. So, before we get started with the questions that are popping in the chat, um, this is a question from a first year student on, like, he just wants to know your journey from, whether it's MLSA and becoming a DSC
That's
lead,
a big one.
and like just, doing so many
Okay,
things and
that's
so many titles.
that's a
Yeah.
really big one. I can give a very short thing, but
Hmm.
okay. So I'm gonna kind of really concise the, but I am gonna be writing an article about this, which I plan to release around Feb 1st when I go full
Waiting
time
for
at
it
Appwrite. So
already.
just saying, a more detailed overview and story will be available then. But like for the sake of time, of course, because of course stream. So
Definitely.
I started back in September 2019. Um, Okay, actually, no. I started before that. So, when I joined college, I was like, I'm someone who cannot sit in class in first year. Okay, I mean, I want to do more because that's a habit that I had from school. Because I was in a residential school, we used to do a lot of stuff outside class. I was like, I need to do something like that. I got started volunteering with a few clubs here. Got involved with our department's tech fest and hackathon, our very first 24-hour hackathon, where I was doing sponsorship work. Because and I got into sponsorship because I thought that's just not gonna have enough people. So I thought that's gonna be my entryway. I learned how to communicate there with people. I learned how to work with organizations, speak with them. Work came later, but speak with them at least because I was doing cold calling and creating content and helping on a lot of different fronts. At that hackathon, we had people from some of these programs, campus experts, the Microsoft Student Partners, which is now the Learn Student Ambassadors, by the way. If you see MSP and MLSA, they aren't two different things. MLSA, MSP became MLSA. That's what happened. So I came to know about these two. I applied to, and September 2019, as I was mentioning earlier, September 2019,
Right.
I got accepted in the MSP program, which was my start in tech communities outside of college. I stayed active there, started attending meetups, did a few talks, sessions with friends, with clubs inside. I did a session with a club inside. I did some stuff with my fellow MSPs outside as well. Um, try to generally keep participating as much as I could in different stuff. I was involved in hackathons outside. Did volunteer in a few places. In a conference I volunteered, that
Right,
was NG
right.
India. Great, great place. Then, just very soon after March 2020,
Mm-hmm.
everything shut down in person because
COVID
COVID.
happened.
Good thing though, COVID started
Mm-hmm.
increasing. This entire remote scenario started increasing remote opportunities for us. Okay, so I started participating in my first hackathon around that time because the in-person hackathons I was supposed to go to got cancelled. So I started
Right.
participating in remote hackathons. I got a remote internship, community, and there was a community development internship at ProGate. Um, did that for 5 months. Alongside, kept doing community stuff. Otherwise, independently, kept doing some talks, participating in some hackathons, and ProGate went along.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, ProGate, that internship is one place where I learned a lot. So after around 5 months, I kind of paused that because I felt, a lot of my learning curve was up. Plus, I had some academic priorities I had to focus towards. And after that, I took a month's break and I got back in touch with ProGate because they had another opportunity
Mm-hmm.
open that was a user research intern,
Right.
which gave me a very different front to work on. Allowed me to interact with people who were customers of ProGate or people who were community members who were looking forward to. And I started tackling these issues because I wanted to get that exposure. User research helped me understand how customer journeys impact product strategy, and that's literally what we
Right,
were
right.
trying to figure out, right? So I got to work on that front, and honestly, ProGate's user research internship happened just because I spent a lot of time and had a lot of good stuff happening at the community intern. Like existing interns didn't know about it. The position wasn't advertised anywhere. I only knew because I had spent enough time, and it was going to be the same manager. So that's the only reason I knew that this was going to happen. But I
Mm-hmm.
was working on building my network, right, and my brand
Right.
throughout my work and community. So I just kept doing stuff on my terms throughout this. Around this time, just after this MLH Coach happened, because I got through those interviews, I'd been involved in hackathons as a hacker, as an organizer, right? So a lot of these different things were happening. HackOn 1.0 had happened earlier as well. where I had been a part of the organizing
Right.
team. And then aside from that, I actually worked with another organization on a blockchain hackathon called Decentralax. So that's just a space I became really invested in. So because of my involvement there, because I ended up as a speaker at MLH's conference that year as well, I thought, I wanted to go ahead for the coach and try out. So I did that. I went ahead, I got through the interviews, and things worked out. Wasn't easy, by the way, those were difficult. But fortune favors the brave, is what I'm going to say there. Because
So
it
true.
really took a lot of courage. I was freaking out throughout. So this is end of 2020. MLH Coach, all of these happened. I was
Mm-hmm.
involved in community stuff. A little worried as well because I hadn't figured out whether dev is something I wanted to do or not. And I was actually referred into a position around a community internship at Hacker Earth around January. And in the middle of that is where I realized that if I would have gone ahead with that, it was a 6 month intern. If I would have gone ahead there, I would have lost
Right.
touch with development. And that freaked me out.
Right. Right.
So I made the decision that halfway into third year, I am going to
Mm-hmm.
start looking for a dev internship. That was a difficult time for me personally because you've made the call, but you don't know whether it's a good call. You don't know whether it's going to leave some result. You don't know whether you're going to actually be
Mm-hmm.
able to work as a dev. Every application is either ghosted or rejected, right? Which is also
Absolutely.
why I ended up messing up other stuff. And just saying, my spiral is only something that two people knew at that point. Um, I also messed up GitHub Campus Experts at that time, which is something I desperately wanted. And it's a loss that I still feel at times, but I've got enough good things happening otherwise, and fortunately, really good terms with that team. So there. But yeah, I had losses at that point as well. Fortunately, community came to the rescue because one of these people had volunteered under in the past year is someone I reached out to because I really liked how these people worked. And I had enough validation from my close friends there because they'd worked with them. So I
Right.
reached out to
Right.
them, talked about my scenario, my situation, my problems, where I lacked knowledge and experience, and we discussed that. And because we'd worked together and he'd seen how I worked, he gave me a chance anyway. So it was a back-end engineering role primarily. I was a software developer intern. I was working with .NET C Sharp. That's something I had exposure to. So my interview was just around .NET and C Sharp, and the result of that was he told me what resources to learn from. I did not go through a DSA test, by the way. Yeah. Honestly, I didn't. But hats off to them because they decided to take that bet on me. Uh, that internship was
True.
an interesting experience, good experience. I learned a lot about development. I learned about whether I wanted to be a developer in the future. It's only after this that I actually decided that I wanted to maintain a touch with community but still stay close to tech, and DevRel is kind of the result of that. um, this summer end, this is also when GDSC lead happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, I'd been in touch with and close to our GDSC anyway. I was a core team member in the past, but I that's again something on my list that I wanted because I'd been so active with our GDSC for a year anyway. So I felt that I wanted to continue that and kind of work with students on campus. That was my way of working with students on the Amity campus. So I went ahead with that. That happened around that time, which was awesome, really cool. And after I took the call for DevRel, I started looking for opportunities around DevRel. We see more of those today. At that point, they just started trickling in.
Right.
But fortunately for me, my background supported me well for DevRel. So I actually got in touch with four different organizations. Um, Few of them, I had good conversations there. One of them just was okay. So one was actually figuring out the strategy for the future. So they kind of paused on things. The other two were like their teams, they were just it would have been a premature decision to jump into them. And at the same time, so within the processes, actually, to be honest, those were my calls there. But Appwrite was the one where I completed the process fastest and first.
Mm-hmm.
So the first company that gave me that offer is the one I joined, and as you can see, I am wearing the hoodie for that company today.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, like, honestly, all four organizations were doing something really cool, something different. One was trying to work on Azure communities in the in around mainly around East Asia. One was trying to simplify the search experience. Whenever we talk about Elasticsearch, all of those really cool application again within open source. A third was a trustless cloud, so bringing together cloud and Web3 and blockchain essentially. And the fourth was an open source backend as a service solution. So amazing products in their own rights, amazing people. I had the fortune of interacting with the founders of all of these because, with with all of them somehow, because these were all startups, right? So I and a lot of them, all of them early stage. So I got to get in touch with their founders through interviews, and lovely teams, lovely people. Appwrite just worked out quickest, and it's also one product that I kind of felt a little more attracted towards because being a backend developer myself, I see how this would benefit, and it's now that I'm learning front end web as well, I understand what sort of impact a platform like this would have. So
Right.
Appwrite was the first place where I got an offer from, and Appwrite is the one that I joined.
Definitely a I mean, there's a lot of takeaways from your journey, whether it's you were just wanting to explore, just, whether it was UX research or, networking, um, just applying, like not just sticking to one thing, like you said, not restricting yourself to tech,
There
but,
were honestly a lot of things I did without asking whether it should be done or not.
yeah.
I felt it was right. I took those calls for myself.
Mhm.
Even today, when I look at opportunities, I work like, obviously I have people who I take advice from, who I take guidance from, but a lot of my decision making is something I do on my terms. And I think that's the thing that I want people to understand. You're gonna get all the guidance in the world. It's all available. Sure. And the fact is it's actually all accessible as well. But you get to decide what step you want to take, right? Whether you want to take it based on that or not. There were times where I ignored advice as well. And at the end of the day, I have to be sure that, I am making the decision for me. It is my choice to go ahead that way. And
True.
you make your decisions. You're not going to regret that you made those calls because you're going to, whether they are good, whether those calls are right or wrong, is is all right. You're not yet in a position where your actions are going to have very severe consequences. That
Right.
is a fact. As students, you should actually not in a position like that. But start making those calls for yourself. Hold yourself accountable, and you're gonna keep working and growing.
It's like decision making is also a skill that needs a lot of you need to work on it, because if you're not going to decide for yourself, someone will do it, and if it doesn't work out, you'll be blaming them. But it's a very toxic cycle, so it's better to decide and be
Oh yeah,
accountable for your
you
decisions.
need to make those calls for yourself. And
True.
honestly, just surround yourself with good people. I had good people around me. It kept me engaged in pulling myself up. Had I not had the same circles, maybe I would have not pushed myself. Friend circles matter a lot in all of this process. Fortunately for me, the friends I was with are all doing well today. And I think it might be kind of because we all kept pushing each other upwards. So
True.
keep good people around you. Keep learning. Stay willing to learn. Stay willing to grow, because a lot of people want to learn but aren't open to it when it's really necessary.
True.
So be open to learning and be open to growth. Okay.
Flexibility, being open, it's a lot of skills, but you have to work on them, definitely.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of questions. We'll
Sure.
just hop on to that. So the first question is: I'm an MCA student. I want to do PhD in computer science, focusing on data science. Why are career aspects of a PhD holder other than professor should I do full-time PhD or part-time PhD with an IT job. Very,
Okay.
very big
First of
question.
all, it's great you're targeting a PhD. Before I kind of jump into this, I'm gonna put out the context. I am not someone who's looking for a master's degree or a PhD. So just putting some context out there that a lot of what I say is gonna be based on my preferences, and either way, I'm gonna try and stay as agnostic to that fact and share what's right. But once again, take my words with a pinch of salt. Think for yourself. Okay. So when we talk about career aspects, at least since you've mentioned data science, I've seen a lot of data scientist roles at companies tend to require master's degrees. So having a PhD is not going to hurt you. It's going to kind of benefit you a lot. Um, and I'm not just talking any random company. I'm talking about orgs like Microsoft and all. Microsoft Research and all has people with PhDs, with masters. That stuff really helps in organizations like these. So a PhD is gonna help you out there. It's gonna open doors for you with a space like data science at least. Yeah. So great if you know if you're pushing for a master's and with for a PhD in CS for data science, it's gonna benefit you a lot. Secondly, whether you do a full-time PhD or a part-time PhD with an IT job is not something that I can answer for you. It has to be something that you solely decide, because you understand the requirements of a PhD, what it takes from you, what you need to do for it. I cannot comment on that because I neither targeted a PhD, nor have I ever been inclined to work. I just haven't had that inclination, so I haven't researched about what it takes. You know that better because you're gunning for it, right? And for that matter, I see a follow on this full time PhD in good university versus jobless PhD in ordinary university. If a PhD from an ordinary university does not close you off to opportunities, uh, and you can get a good quality job, sure, but otherwise, a good university at least is something I will definitely recommend for your PhD. Regardless of that, it adds a lot of brand value and a lot of backing for your education. So for scenarios that are dependent on educational qualifications, the quality of institution does help. So a good university won't hurt you. And that being said, you can get part-time work even at good universities. That's not something that is an issue. So why not just get some part-time work while full-time at a good university? I mean, if I was going for a PhD, again, this is not something I'm doing, but if that was the call I was making, I would target a good university and maybe get some part-time work alongside. Okay. Because part-time work here and there is one thing that's mainly just assisting with your earning. Um, the real value creator for you is your university. Now, if your job is the one that you're using to create value, then the job becomes a priority. But if not, university should be up there. I would say prioritize on that over the org. And as far as companies go, there's a lot in this world. You have to decide that for yourself. Um, Look at organizations doing quality work in the spaces you want to work in. Look at teams that you like. Look at organizations that are opening opportunities as well. That's another side of it. Okay. So think about that. I can't tell you which company to choose because there are a lot of good companies out there. Chances are you might have a new company come out tomorrow that isn't existing today. That's a great workplace for you. I know when I started in first year, Appwrite did not exist as a company, it just existed as an open source project. So be open to that. Keep your eyes out. Understand how you review companies as well. Understand what you consider safe organizations, how what teams you like, because those were factors that I had to think about when I took a call in Apprate. I knew that they have funding. I really liked the team, so I kind of took that call. I was willing to take that risk there, but you're gonna have to decide how much risk you can take and what you're targeting for yourself. Right? Some company might be an expert in OC with computer vision stuff, and other might be with other fronts. Comes down to what you're targeting. So I can't take that call for you. Yeah.
Definitely. Again, decision making, one has to work on that. So,
Yes.
moving on, this is a very, like a
Oh,
very
that's a
good
good one.
question. Yeah. How
That's a good
open
one.
source helps in getting an internship?
It a
Very,
lot. Okay.
very good.
So when we talk about open source, I'm gonna talk about this from the context of technical internship, since I believe this might be get towards a technical internship. When you work and contribute to open source, you're getting software development experience. You're getting to work in a larger organization and institution. You're learning how to communicate, write as well, because you have to express, you have to document. You're learning how to reverse engineer and understand, and all of this adds to your code portfolio. You see how that's going?
Definitely.
There are organizations today which prioritize on open source. There are open source organizations that are becoming companies today. So it's gonna help. It adds to your portfolio. It's something that you can express. You can talk about what you've built at these organizations. You can build networks in these. You can connect with people who are working at other places. There are people who are getting opportunities solely because of how good their GitHub profiles look and the work there looks. That's becoming
True.
more and more real today. So yeah, open source is gonna help you a lot. It's gonna get you some great experience.
Open source is also flourishing. Like you can
Open
try your
source
hands on
lets you
different
build to
things
the
and learn.
public, so everything you do can be presented somewhere. It's not stuck behind
True.
any NDAs or paywalls. So it actually can benefit you a lot.
Definitely. So, moving on, this is a very, very good question. Like, I want to get started with DevRel engineering. How to get started with it and what are the
First question
prerequisites?
to think is, why do you want to get started with DevRel? That's my first question, because a lot of people kind of jump into this for a lot of reasons. A lot being that it doesn't need as much DSA testing as SDE. That's the big point. I've seen that a lot. So that's why I'm putting this out. Why do you want to do DevRel? Okay, answer that question and we can continue on that. Because how
Be-
to get started is, so here's the thing. But there's no one single way. It depends on what the organization needs. If someone has a heavy content writing requirement, then you need that, right? If someone has a focus on community development, then you need that exposure. A typical balance would suggest some experience working and managing communities independently or not, some experience as a developer. Whether that's professional or not is something that depends on the company. Some expect professional experience. Third would be content writing, being able to write blogs. Content is a big part of DevRel, very big part of DevRel. Fourth, being able to speak at stages and speak to people. Public speaking becomes a part there. Fifth, some sense of marketing. Sixth, trying to understand growth metrics, because that's a big problem in DevRel generally. So there's a lot of different things there. And the thing is, you don't need to be a master of all trades. Just be a jack of all trades and a master of at least one. But here's the thing: that there's just a lot of organizations that have a lot of priorities. Some might not require all of these. Some might. It's gonna vary there. So you have to figure out what you want to do, where you want to focus, and why do you enjoy this. And here's the thing about DevRel, and this is something I say very often. DevRel is not something that you can wake up one day and decide that, today I have woken up and I'd say I will do DevRel. That's not how you go about DevRel. It's a philosophy that you build up over time. It's not just a job. You start by helping people, you start by building remote samples or helping create content or mentoring other people. And one day you realize you're doing this, but it's not something you decide one day that today I will start targeting to join DevRel. That's not how this is gonna go. It won't.
it's like you build it. It's not just a one day thing.
It's yeah. You can't build this in one day. It's impossible to do that for DevRel.
Right. I think that was a you know how you mentioned initially that why you want to do it. Do you want to do it because you want to do it or because you're running away from DSA? That's like
Yeah, like
a very
honestly, for me, I realized that I like working with people. I like assisting people. I like helping. I feel it makes me feel happier, and I like doing that around the context of tech.
true.
And I build relevant experience there is why I kind of came to this decision, because I did a dev internship, I did community development, I did user research, which is focused on product, essentially focused around product strategy. And I spent 1.5 years in communities, organizing my own stuff, mentoring my own stuff, speaking at public stages or streams, and stages literally because I've done in-person activities as well, and volunteering under other people. After that is where I came to a decision that I wanted to do DevRel. And the thing was, my experiences kind of just backed me up onto that anyway, because I'd been doing relevant stuff. But
Right.
it took me 1.5 years to get to that decision, by the way.
Gaining experience, having confidence, it's like a whole process getting into DevRel, I believe. Definitely.
And it's actually a philosophy you need to understand, because if you're kind of doing it just for the sake of show, you're not going to sustain. You're going to burn out very quickly.
True. So I think we are almost done with the questions in the chat and the questions that we had for you. So, and I also believe we are kind of getting overboard with time. So I hope you
That's
all
okay.
had fun. Thank you so much, Aditya, for sitting with us and, answering the questions and just clearing, like giving so many learnings, whether it's learning how to make
Mhm.
decisions, experiences, getting over imposter syndrome. Definitely a very insightful and a very helping session. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for everyone who popped in the questions in the chat, who were listening, the questions that we had beforehand. It was a very, very good session, I believe. And thank you so much. And subscribe to our channel. We'll be coming up with more such AMAs and more such sessions. So do keep tuned up and subscribe. And I think we can end it right there. So bye bye. Have a great day. Bye.